It's that time again, guys. Time for a vampire movie review. Today's video isn't about a particularly old or scary film, but about an unusual 80s comedy film centering around a vampiric villainess, the Countess, played by Lauren Hutton. The film also serves as Jim Carrey's film debut in a lead role, and it's quite interesting to see him finding his feet, particularly as a physical comedian on screen. A lot of 80s comedy films can be quite crude and tasteless while discussing sexuality, so I just wanted to provide a warning that while it's not explicit in any way, this film has somewhat of a theme of creepiness around intimate relationships. That's the safest way that I can describe it for YouTube. I did watch Once Bitten once or twice as a kid, but its coarseness skeezed me out a bit, and it seems to be reviewed poorly at worst and mixed at best, based on what I could find online. But is Once Bitten being judged unfairly? Let's find out. Without further ado, on with the review. So, we get some footage of the Countess's evening routine, with the assistance of her manservant, Sebastian. Very fitting name in vampire media for some reason, just the way it sounds, I guess. Sebastian is played by Cleavon Little, who I know best from Mel Brooks' most controversial film, Blazing Saddles. The Countess complains that virgin blood is hard to come by these days, and if you're familiar with vampires, you'll understand that this is important for whatever reason. She then explains that she must have such apparently rare blood 3 times before Halloween to maintain her youth. And man, you can tell this is an 80s comedy movie just from these first 5 minutes alone. The heavy exposition, the crassness, this pretty much sets the film's tone. 3 of the Countess's posse of vampires then arrives. World War I ace vampire, Confederate vampire, and Flower Child vampire. Gosh, I thought this was an 80s comedy movie, not Twilight. Swiftly moving along, these guys are actually credited under those names, by the way. And this movie suddenly became even more 80s. We cut to our so-called protagonist, Mark Kendall, played by Jim Carrey, trying to convince his girlfriend Robin into liaising with him, if you catch my drift. Not a good way to endear the audience to our main character. This really seems to bother Mark, who seems to believe his virginity is a testament to some kind of flaw, and discusses searching for a casual encounter on the side with his friends. This just isn't funny to me, I just feel bad for Robin. I'll discuss this in more detail during my analysis section, but while this aspect of the film is very much a product of its time, it has always sort of put me off. The pressure that Mark feels to fit into the expectations at the time leads him and his friends to a nightclub, and naturally, he encounters the Countess.
How old are you?
Older than you think.
That's okay.
Creepiness aside, given these specific circumstances, ironic lines where the vampire hints that they're, well, a vampire, always get a chuckle out of me. Mark is separated from his friends when some guy mistakes one of them for the guy his wife is having an affair with, and attempts to shoot at them? The Countess takes the opportunity to get Mark to go back to her elaborate mansion, and we actually get a line that I think is well written in terms of displaying how manipulative she, and other villainous vampire characters, can be.
Are you a prostitute?
I'm whatever you want me to be.
In this movie, vampires don't really extract blood from their victims in the traditional sense, as it's suggested that she ends up biting Mark's leg. Unusual method, but there is an artery there, I suppose. With no memory of the previous night, Mark leaves after dreaming that he was a juice box, and has a craving for raw meat at school. Unfortunately, poor Robin overhears Mark discussing his amorous escapades, and she's hurt of course and breaks up with him. He then continues with his undead-like behaviour when he dissects a frog with unusual skill in a class he's never taken, and is caught napping in a trunk by his father. He dreams of having dinner with the Countess, and all of these things point to the fact that he has begun his transformation into a vampire. Some days later, Mark somehow manages to talk Robin into forgiving him, and he goes out with her and his friends immediately. It doesn't really go well for his friends either. Isn't this attempted murder? The Countess sneaks into the changing rooms with Mark while Robin is helping him pick out clothes, I assume via the mist method. She successfully gets the second out of 3 blood transfusions, and this just gives Mark a penchant for being emo. And scaring kids? I don't know about that one. He's not quite vampire enough to not enter church, so he goes to confess his sins after this, worried that his poor behaviour has really caught up to him this time.
What can I do?
Get yourself a shovel. You're in deep shit.
That night, he dreams of biting Robin in his best Bela Lugosi cosplay outfit, which disturbs him to no end upon waking. What is that, a ketchup spillage? At the Halloween dance, Mark and Robin dance to some on-theme, very 80s music before the Countess appears. This is really inappropriate. This is a school dance. I guess this is a visual way to show the struggle between the Countess and Robin for Mark, and Robin is the clear winner here. The Countess leaves, and Mark storms off when he wins the best costume contest, as his vampiric look isn't a costume to him. As I said, he's just alternative. Robin hugs Mark in an attempt to comfort him, and he notices that his reflection is fading. While she doesn't take him seriously at first, Robin also notices that this is the case, and they rush to a bookshop to do some research on vampires. The bookseller explains the gist of the Countess's motive to Robin, that she needs to drain Mark's blood from his femoral artery in order to maintain her youth, etc., etc. Robin presents this information to Mark's friends under the guise of Mark catching a venereal disease, and they bizarrely try to spot 2 marks on Mark's thigh while in the shower. This doesn't really go to plan, and the pair are accused of being gay, which doesn't really bode well given the time period. Yeah, this movie isn't exactly the most sensitive. Mark tells the 2 guys off, before suddenly chasing the Countess's limousine when he sees Robin getting lured into it. With just over 15 minutes left to go, it's time for the final showdown. The trio of misfits sneaks into the Countess's mansion, only to find Robin tied up. After freeing her, they're confronted by the Countess and her guests. They prepare Mark for the 3rd and final bite, but his friends accost the vampires with crucifixes.
It only works in the movies. Besides, I'm an atheist. Fire! On the other hand...
Robin and Mark ditch Mark's friends and are chased through the house, while the previously mentioned pair flirt with the 2 vampires left behind. The chase sequence is very repetitive, and Mark and Robin hide in one of the coffins, intending to foil the Countess's plan while in there.
You couldn't have. You've been in there less than a minute. You could have.
Following a questionable 80s transformation sequence, the Countess's appearance reflects her age, aka she just turns into Lauren Hutton wearing a bad old lady wig. And she resigns to never being able to find another virgin. That pretty much sums up this movie. So, what did I think of Once Bitten overall? I can't say it's the worst movie ever, but I didn't really find it funny. I found the characters' motives, as well as the source of many of the jokes, to be incredibly dated, and simply not my style of humour. In general, a lot of the humour was kind of a downer for me. It was just your run-of-the-mill 80s sex comedy movie that relies heavily on tired tropes. They even directly addressed the one that is the driving force of the plot.
You're supposed to say no and I'm supposed to get pissed off.
You make it sound like the 50s.
But that doesn't excuse the fact that they overuse these tropes. Aspects of the film like this kind of creep me out, Mark feeling so pressured to conform to the culture at the time's standards of manhood that he bothers Robin about it, and at least intends to cheat on her. Just because he isn't successful doesn't mean he is absolved of wrongdoing. I also wasn't sure of the characters' ages going into this, and while it's stated that they're 18, The Countess is actually quite predatory and creepy, and ignores Mark's requests to be left alone. This just really put a bad taste in my mouth. Speaking of bad taste, the film also uses queerness as a source of comedy, which just came across to me as incredibly retrograde. It's a product of its time, but it just didn't really resonate with me the way I was hoping it would based on my memories of it, and I can't see it being made today. Although I have quite a lot I don't like about this movie, there are some things about it that I did like. I find it very interesting that Mark Kendall is quite different to the roles that Carrie later became known for, with a particularly grating brand of adolescent whininess, not to mention being far less animated. He did have quite an interesting physicality in some shots, which sort of foreshadowed the cartoony roles he settled into later, I think. Regardless of how unlikable I personally find them, all of the actors seem to understand their characters, and the tone that the film is going for, very well and give it their all. This can even be said for the Countess's minions, who barely appear on screen for the most part. The dance scene is also so ridiculous that I have to smile at it. It's just so 80s and cheesy, and is a very simple and effective way for the filmmakers to showcase the struggle between the two women and Mark. In summary, I have quite mixed feelings on Once Bitten, and I think things are going to stay that way for the near future. It's a very unique mix of things, and I haven't seen many films like it, including those in the same genre from around the same time. For all its flaws under a modern lens, it does serve as an 80s time capsule, and I think those who can enjoy the film with that knowledge in mind could enjoy it. Well, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.
The blue and green ones are my favorite kind, but I'll eat the colored ones from time to time, 'cause polos is life, 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 polos is life. Sleep all night and then polos is life.